I remember one of the shamans told me as well, if you have guilt, that's from an action you took. You have guilt for what you did. But if you have shame, that's because you have like really shame for who you are. Like there's a part of you that you're shameful about. And like that's inner, that's not just guilt where you feel guilty you did something. It's like I'm shameful like for doing those things. So it's really about identity. And I think it really, the biggest thing is just sitting with a lot of this. A lot of this is repressed trauma that people have not dealt with. And I think ayahuasca gives you the perfect platform just to sit with it and experience it so you can release it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pammy. I'm the founder of the Psychedelic Sisterhood. And today I have with me Taylor, who is going to talk about her psychedelic experience and what brought her to the medicine and the benefits that she had.
Maybe 17 or 18, I had heard of it. And I always, as soon as I learned about it, I was intrigued. And I had met people at hostels that had taken ayahuasca in Peru, my first trip out there for graduation. And everyone I met had life-changing experiences. One woman was writing a book. One woman I spoke to that was in my bunk room, she was going to leave her boyfriend of 4 years when she got back home. And
so surprised
just, I know. Yeah. At least you didn't do it over the phone, right? But just, meeting wonderful people in this hostel that all had incredible experiences. So I took a mental note of that for sure. And I returned back to my life. And then I'd say when I was 19, 20, I was taking a gap year from high school and college, and I felt kind of lost. I think a lot of people feel lost at that age. And I just felt like there was a disconnect with me. And I felt like I had a lot of problems just projecting myself and connecting with people with authenticity and having these authentic relationships. So I really wanted to push myself and move past that any way I could. So I started to do research, and I did a lot of research. I didn't take it lightly. I read up on books, podcasts, watched YouTube interviews, and I finally did find a retreat in Iquitos, Peru. And that's where I booked. I did about a month stay. And it was for my first stay. For my experience at the retreat. And at that retreat, I had ayahuasca multiple times. So yes, it was definitely something I was called to do. And I felt that call. And through that experience, I definitely grew as a person.
That's amazing. I mean, just at 19, to decide that you're going to spend a month in a foreign country, someplace that you've never been, and decide, this is the place. I'm going to stay a month. Here's my backpack.
it actually, I should say, I did not start as a month. I think it was supposed to be 2 weeks. And then as I was there, I decided to progress my stay because I was just having these amazing insights into my psyche and these realizations that I just could not have back in my previous environment. So I did extend my stay, and then I ended up staying the full month as well. So
that's good. Yeah. And also, I think it's a testament to your parents to allow you to take that gap year. A lot of kids are just thrown into college or thrown into, another job experience just because they're like, well, you have to do something. And they're allowed you the space to really find yourself, find what you want to do. And I commend them for that. I'm so glad you had that experience. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and they're so supportive, and they were 100% aware I was doing it. And, they've always been very open-minded, and I have a good relationship with my parents, but I was also having to work through the trauma I had with them as well. My parents are really great, but I think that they almost gave me too much freedom sometimes, that there was a lack of stability. And but they're great. I know that they're good people, and we all have our traumas. So that was also another huge part of the retreat as well, was working through that trauma. And it's not just parents that the trauma comes from, it's really an ancestral lineage, right? And the shamans taught me that. So the shamans, when I was talking about the trauma with my parents, they're like, no, it's really an ancestral generational trauma that you should own up to and heal. And then from learning that, I had so much more compassion for my parents, and really just for the whole line of family. So
it's incredible. Like you go and you think you're going to go through a certain amount of, you know, not traumas, but just a little few things that you want to like look into, and it turns
Mm,
into all these other things that are way older and way much more, you know,
absolutely.
vast than you had imagined. That's amazing, and to
Mm.
continuously be able to do that for a whole month is great.
It wasn't easy. And
Mm.
there are definitely times that I questioned why I was there, you know, because when you're in the middle of the Amazon and you're taking plant medicine with people you have not met
Yeah.
and with a bunch of shamans, and it's a surreal experience. And I was so grateful for it. But, you know, you can't
Mhm.
help but wonder why you're doing it to yourself sometimes, because the inner work is so deep. And sometimes it will unravel things that you're not even ready to deal with.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I think mentally preparing yourself. I'm a huge believer in preparing prior to the retreat.
Yeah.
I think there's a big misconception with ayahuasca that you drink the ayahuasca and you're healed.
Mm.
And I think ayahuasca is great. It's a wonderful tool. You know, it's a tool for your healing. It's not going to be your healing.
Mhm.
And definitely spending the time. I mean, for my retreat personally, and every retreat is different.
Mhm.
We followed all the cultural, you know, all the spiritual beliefs of the diet and the cleansing prior to the retreat. So that started 1 month before I even entered Iquitos or Peru.
Oh, nice.
And super strict diet, you
Mm.
know, so no meat, no dairy, low salt, no caffeine, pretty standard, like very, very healthy, strict, healthy diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also no sexual intercourse for 2 weeks prior to the retreat.
Mm.
The shamans told me that this is because they don't want anyone's energy to interlock, and they
Mm.
want you to come with your own trauma and your own energy to the retreat to heal. So I
Mm.
did all of that. I was trying to be very respectful of it. And everyone's different, but I do believe personally that people can do themselves a disservice if they don't follow that regime. And
Absolutely.
it's a
Absolutely.
huge part of the healing. You know, the diet is also healing your body.
It
And
is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's it's not just an emotional healing but a physical one as well.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I
I
mean, especially when you think about caffeine or sugar and
mm,
how that hypes up your system so much, and you don't even realize
sure.
it because it's such a part of, you know, our culture to just have
Mm,
coffee every morning, you know,
I
something
know.
sugary for breakfast, or to have a dessert every dinner. You know, you don't think about
Yeah,
how the things that you consume on that level.
absolutely.
It's like, oh, this is what I usually do. This is what I usually have. I just have a taste for this, and you just kind of
Mm.
shove it in.
it's
Um,
it's an addictive culture for sure, you know, and
yeah.
it's very gluttonous.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, releasing that before you go. The shamans told me too, it's also a big part of and their, you know, their spiritual belief is that ayahuasca is an entity.
Mhm.
So they believe like Mother Ayahuasca is an entity that comes in and heals you.
Mhm.
And I also, from what I experienced, I would say I do believe that.
Mhm.
And it's showing up for the medicine and showing that you are ready for the work. I actually have an acquaintance I met at that hostel, you know, in Cusco, that all
Mhm.
these people were having these great experiences. And one woman I met, she did not do the diet and she did not do the detox, and
Mhm.
she was like a chronic marijuana smoker,
Mhm.
and she smoked all the way up until she had to go to the retreat, and the ayahuasca just never hit her. Yeah.
Wow.
So she was super
Mhm.
bummed out because she had finished her retreat, and she was telling me how much she had regretted not doing the process. And the shamans
Mhm.
told her, you did not respect Mother Ayahuasca. You
Mhm.
know, you did not show up to the space ready to be cleansed. You did not respect the medicine. So she did not show up for you.
Mhm.
And who knows? I'm sure there's a ton of contributors that could have that is why that happened. But I think it's interesting and it's not worth risking, you know, especially if
Mhm.
you're going to be investing to go to Peru. I would say just do it and don't put yourself at risk of not experiencing the medicine.
Especially if you're gonna spend all that money and go on a retreat, like, come
Definitely.
on.
Just like get it together. Like, why are we here?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, I think there's just not enough information about like ayahuasca in the public that, like I said, there are misconceptions. And people think they don't have to work with the medicine, that they can
Mhm.
just take the cup and they'll be healed. It really is not like that.
Absolutely. Even this weekend, I'm going
Mm,
to ceremony, not ayahuasca, just mushrooms. But
nice.
this was the first time I was given a list of things to eat before, like the diet before
Mm,
I go.
right.
And as many times as I had ayahuasca in Brooklyn or Queens, I've never had anyone ever say, "Oh, you should follow this diet before you come." It was
Right.
always just like, "Yeah, show up at this time. We're good." Not
Definitely.
even the afterthought of like try to stay eating, fresh fruits and vegetables after
Right.
just to keep your body cleansed. Don't go straight into like, a big mac and cheese,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
and so going to this ceremony is probably the first time I felt just really appreciated for the people that are facilitating that they would go that far, because I think it sets a precedent for people that are coming to the ceremony, honestly. And it
Definitely.
shows that you're serious about it. Now,
Yes.
not every psychedelic has to be taken so seriously all the time,
Right.
but with these are kind of like the work,
Of course.
ayahuasca is the work. You can't take ayahuasca and go to a party. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You
Well,
can
like
try.
you can try. Probably not the best party drug unless you want to be very traumatized socially, just stuck in the bathroom the whole party. But yeah, I mean, ayahuasca, it translates in like Quechua language to soul vine, or like vine of the soul. And that's intense. Like that's not something you want to be taking at a party.
Absolutely.
And like you said previously with the facilitators, the retreat you go to is very important. The facilitators, the retreat I went to, they were all very good people. And I actually still speak to some of the people I met at that retreat like daily. And they've become great supports for me, just because, if you're in the Amazon, in the middle of the Amazon taking plant medicine, and there's people with you, like these are your people, right? Like these are all people that have ventured out to grow and improve themselves on a scary journey. Like that is not easy to get on that plane. So definitely like great connections as well, great food. And the facilitators that I had, were also just very kind and very focused on the healing. But not all retreats are like that. And a lot of retreats are becoming commercialized by Westerners. So like a lot of Western-owned retreats in Peru, they're kind of coming in and commercializing it, and they're doing like 3-day retreats. The retreat I went to, it was a 2-week minimum. So they pretty much said, you come here and you stay to do the work. This is not something you come for the weekend to try. Like you're here to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the retreat that I went to way back when, to 2015, they had options for shorter retreats, but then I think they start to realize that people were just coming in and going out, and
it's a different crowd.
Yeah, it wasn't really that whole doing that work feeling of being part of something that you're really going to work towards. So
definitely,
I think about a few months, maybe like 6 months or so after I left, they totally took out all the shorter dates completely. And
makes sense.
2-week minimum.
Yeah, exactly.
I was happy for it, because it just showed how much they valued the work that was being done with ayahuasca. They took it very seriously.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to mention they're also coming out with a cookbook, which honestly,
Ooh.
I miss the food there. Oh, I went in Pucallpa, and some of the food they had was just so good. And this was before I even thought about being vegan, vegetarian, and I became vegetarian vegan after that
Me too.
ceremony. Because it just felt so good before I left, before I went to the trip. And afterward, I was like, well, I want to keep feeling good. I released so much. Why not keep this going? So I was vegan for at least 9 months at least. And, eventually chicken nuggets made its way back.
Of course, that culture, our American culture, of course. That's the owner of the retreat I talked to. He said he spent years detoxing and then retoxing, right? And that's pretty common, like before you finally hit that point. But any detox at any point is so healing.
Sure, yeah.
And I also did go vegetarian for quite some time after the retreat. I'm vegan for a few months, and then again kind of retoxed, and then now I am still a vegetarian. So it was one of the things I did take from one of the ceremonies, was just how much hurt there is in the world. And I felt so overwhelmed by that, like the unnecessary harm that we're causing other beings. And I've always consciously known that, but I guess to feel that empathetically, it really did change my viewpoint on meat. And, to each their own. I'm a big believer in everyone's in charge of their own destiny, whatever diet they want. But that's just for my personal journey, something that I chose to do.
So when you brought this up to your parents, what did that conversation go like?
I mean, my
I said
parents are
so weird, by the way.
no, it's hilarious. No, I mean, no, they were supportive. Like both of my parents, I've always kind of done my own thing, and I've always been like a good kid, you know, whatever. Like I never got in too much trouble. So I think, and they knew I was very adventurous. I'd been traveling since I was 16, and both of my parents have never left the country. And I just started when I was 16. You know, I would meet friends and have connections, and I would save up and I'd go. So I think it was just like a mutual respect and understanding. And they were like, do your research, you know, be safe and just look out for yourself, you know, especially with psychedelics, which they both don't have too much experience in, if any at all. So, you know, they're just like this, you know, they're spiritual. So they believe if you're going to be opening yourself up, you know, make sure you're in a good environment. If your energy is opening up and you're going to be in a sensitive state, you know, make sure you're surrounded by good people.
Yeah,
but, you know, conversation, absolutely. And the conversation went probably too easy. You know, I'm very lucky to get that support for sure.
That's good. That's wonderful. Not a lot of people have that. I
100%.
I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't want to tell them until I was coming back. I want to tell them after the fact. I'm like, this has happened, and this is what I learned, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't go that way at all. Somehow, I think my mom knew I was going. She kept asking questions. She was like,
that mother intuition.
Yeah. Because I told her I was going on a trip, and she kept asking me like periodically every other week, like, oh, where are you going? And then she'd ask more questions and then more questions. And
kind of put it together.
The final day before I went, I was finally like, oh, you asked me so many questions. This is what I'm doing. So I told her, and she freaked out.
Oh my gosh.
But I mean, that just showed how much, you know, she was like, she cared at least.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm not mad at her for it, but I just didn't want her to worry. So I didn't want to tell her just yet. I was going to tell her eventually, even though I know she wouldn't have liked it. I just didn't want to tell her immediately. Like before I
makes sense.
Because she's also kind of like a highly anxious person sometimes when she doesn't know the outcome of something. So then that will make me anxious, and then I'll carry that over with me, you know. But it turned out okay. I think I turned out fine.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think about it as well. If I have children, if I had a 19 or 20-year-old that wanted to go off and do this alone, you know, or go do this, I would just I'd be hesitant, but I've experienced the journey. And I think with research of anything, especially online nowadays, like you can really get a good idea if you dig deep and don't just trust the first page, you know, of reviews, that 5-star commercial westernized retreat, you know, but.
Well, that's kind of what happened is she looked it up, and the first thing instead of looking up the links that I gave her, she just looked up ayahuasca in Google, and the first thing she saw was an article about this boy dying from ayahuasca. And of course it kind of just glazes over that he was taking some other medications with it. They didn't even bother talking about that in as much detail as the rest of the article. But that's the first thing she saw. So of course she was like, well, I don't want you to do this. You know what I mean? So I hated that was the thing that she saw. But then that didn't. So when she did go to the links that I sent her, I didn't bring her any comfort whatsoever. But that poses a good question. Like, I never thought about that if I had a child. Not child. They better be an adult at this point. Looking at psychedelics. But yeah, if I had like a 19-year-old looking into doing something that I had never heard of, I'd probably want to do the research with them just to see what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also be a safe space for them as well, to be able to like let them know that I was open to speaking about it after the experience, or if they wanted me to go with them to the experience, or if they wanted to do it alone, you know, I'm still going to support them. And I think that's what a lot of people need with psychedelics, especially as popular as it's becoming now. So many people are very interested and just, you know, don't have that. And you have support from your friends, but it's miles different when you have support from your
definitely. Yeah, from the core base of support you've always had. And I think the biggest gap between us achieving that, you know, in society is just an understanding. And I mean, I had no idea what ayahuasca was until my first trip to Peru, and I just heard the word. And but I'd never even heard the word before prior to that. And I think just normalizing it and educating people, and it's not for everyone, you know, it really isn't. And I think it's important that you get a retreat that has a vet process or an interview process. Like I was thoroughly interviewed before I went to my retreat. And that was specifically about like medications I took, vitamins I took, you know, if I had any background in bipolar disorder or PTSD, like severe anxiety where I've harmed people or myself. And that is necessary. And I think as we continue to move forward, as long as it's safe, just educating the public and letting people decide if it's a tool for them that they'd like to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not even just with ayahuasca, but any other, you know, substance as well.
Yeah, other substances and other plant medicine. And I will say too, like ayahuasca was not the only plant medicine that I worked with at the retreat. So there were, they first started with the tobacco cleanse, which is again part of the traditional diet. So it was a 3-day, I was in isolation, like in my tambo, which is like a private, you could say a hut, right? Like a private house or hut. And they would bring me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it was very like, you know, minimal. It was like a juice cleanse or like porridge and bananas. And yeah, it was just the tobacco cleanse, which probably was a lot harder than the ayahuasca physically, I'd say for me. You know, it's just pure liquid tobacco, like a cup or a bowl. It's cringy. Yeah, I cringe to this day. I cringe to this day. I will smell like a cigarette and it's like a flashback. But it's part of the purging process, so that when you go into ayahuasca, you're not just, especially when you're first starting the retreat, you're not just purging the whole time, and you can kind of go more straight into the healing. Like I did not purge my first 2 ayahuasca ceremonies at all. I was nauseous and I was running to the bathroom, but I was not purging. So yeah, and I think that had a big part to do with it. Other things I worked with as well was San Pedro. So San Pedro, it's like the San Pedro cactus, and it's crushed down into a powder and formulated as well. And that is also very useful in a healing process. It's said to open the heart, you know, kind of quiet the mind. It's really great for childhood trauma. And I have, it's hard to explain San Pedro. I would say it's very similar to like a marijuana high, but very clean. And it kind of brings you into your body. And I just remember being giddy. I was just laughing. You know, I totally felt tapped into my inner child. And at some points, I think ayahuasca was a great tool, but San Pedro, sometimes I didn't expect much from it, but it, you know, it did just as much healing for me, especially for like trauma in my past, you know, and emotional, like heart things. I think that like people hold on to. San Pedro is a great tool. And lastly is the sapo. So sapo was also incorporated into the retreat I went to, which is a frog poison, and it's extracted from the frog. And what they do is I think that there are different ways of inserting it, but how my retreat chose to do it was they lightly burned 5 little dots on my skin. It did not hurt. And of course I consented to all of that. And then over that, they just slightly glaze on the frog poison, and then they cover it with wax. And then you let it absorb. You let it absorb for about 15 to 20 minutes. And some of the side effects of that is like swelling. You're sweating, you know, it's more of a physical purge as well. So kind of detoxing your skin and detoxing all of that. Sometimes like it was uncomfortable. It's kind of like an allergic reaction. My breathing was never affected, of course, but you know, this is like it is a poison. So you know, but it's a huge step as well in that process. And I think I did so much research. I knew the risks, and I really just wanted to be a part of this ceremony, and I wanted to really do it right. I wanted to incorporate myself in all the aspects of it. So I did try all of those. Yes.
Very nice. And from what I know, well, from what I understand about sapo, it's the same as combo, right? It's just
I believe so.
Right?
I believe so. Yeah, it might be like a different type of frog or something, but yeah.
It basically works with your immune system. Like it
right.
Supercharges your immune system.
Yes,
gives you
exactly.
a little bit of an infection so that your body can fight it off.
And
definitely. I have a friend who I spoke with recently, not too long ago. He ended up contracting Lyme disease. Now, this isn't a PSA for anyone that has Lyme disease or anything else to go do sapo/combo, but because you know, with Lyme disease, sometimes you don't notice the symptoms until much later, and by that time, it'll be more difficult to eradicate. but and I don't even think there is a cure for Lyme disease just yet.
I don't believe so.
I think there are things where you can like minimize the symptoms, but I think
Definitely,
as far as like the illness goes, you just have it. But he caught it. Maybe he realized he got bit by a tick, and then the next day he was feeling, maybe in 2 days, maybe he was feeling very sluggish, and he was like, "This is abnormal." And then you remembered, "Oh, bit by a tick. I need to go to the doctor."
Yeah,
He went to
definitely.
the doctor. A few other things. He had a few other symptoms as well. Doctors like definitely have the symptoms of Lyme disease. You probably have it. So he like rushed to do sample treatments. He traveled to South America, I believe, to do it. And I'm not sure how long his trip was or how many times he had it, but he definitely went just for that. And he came back and got tested again by the doctor, and the doctor said he didn't see anything relatable to Lyme in his body. Now, I don't know if he was cured. I don't know if his symptoms were just, part of something that was normally happening with his body, and the doctor assumed it was Lyme. I don't know. I can't say he was cured, but I just know he had it and then he didn't.
That's
and
so
combo
interesting.
was in between.
Yes.
So,
and that's a common experience too. Like, I mean, I did not go for physical healing. I more went for like trauma healing or emotional healing. But many people at the retreat came specifically for ailments that they were experiencing or diseases that they had. And I heard a lot of success stories, from people that had been there, the facilitators at the retreat, that they would get follow-up stories and people would be cured. Obviously, I'm never going to say that it's like a magic potion that's just going to cure you and whatever disease. But, I think anything's worth a shot. And if you're open to it and you do your research and it potentially is a tool, I mean, and yeah, it could be used. Absolutely.
I also think there is a lot of, I don't know what to call it. There's something around self-healing as well. Once you have the idea that you want to heal yourself, you want to get better. I think that has that sort of manifestation of wanting that. It's getting kind of spiritual now.
Oh yeah, I'd love to see it.
A lot of that is super important because I've seen it with friends that are like, "Oh, I have this illness. I'm that's it. I have it. I just need medication. I just need this, and that is I just have to live with this." I've seen that with my parents with diabetes. It wasn't until we had a conversation and was like, "Hey, we're going to get you off these pills. This is what we're going to do. We're going to change your diet. You're going to want to get better. You're not going to be like, I'm just going to take a pill and I can do whatever I want." That's not the attitude, Dad. So it works. I mean, thankfully his diabetes wasn't super severe, and he had just gotten on the medication and had to take insulin. But with the change of his diet and with wanting to be better, with wanting to having the intention to be better, it kind of cured him. And I can't say 100%, like I can't prove it that that's what cured him, that happy thoughts cured him, but it definitely helped, I would say. At least for his well-being, and just I can just see emotionally he was willing to do better for himself in general, and I think that helped a lot too.
Oh yeah, and you're so right. Like bringing it back to the emotional state of like you do a big part of physical healing does start in your emotional body and in your brain, and just healing that trauma as well can definitely link with that. And I remember reading once that, disease, that comes from the word from like dis-ease. Right. So, I mean, a lot of things that people, especially in America, where we're over prescribed prescriptions, and a lot of things I think that are prescribed a prescription, it could be caused by anxiety, dis-ease, not a proper diet, and just not taking care of your body. So your body is in a state of dis-ease, and that can cause numerous problems, for anyone. So I agree.
So take me back to when you were 19 and you went to South America, to Iquitos, and you had your first experiences. Can you tell me what you went for specifically and what visualizations or what lessons you learned there that helped you after?
Definitely. When I showed up, I really wanted to stay open. And I even wrote that down, I don't want to have any expectations for my retreat. And I had studied so many different podcasts and videos of people and what they saw, you know, the snakes and all of that. And I was like, you know what, whatever I see, but my intention is to heal. And I want the medicine to show me what I need to see. And I kept it really open, you know, and especially for my first ceremony, I did 4 in total. My first ayahuasca ceremony, I went in that night to a large maloca. I would compare it to a cathedral, you know, it's like 50 feet tall. It's beautiful. And it's all made of wood. And there's a large circle. And in the middle of the circle is like a small fire pit. And, you know, you all kind of gather, you choose a mat. And after about an hour or so, they begin the ceremony and they turn off the lights. So our ceremonies were very different. So each one, a completely different experience, completely different visuals, and a different like emotion was tapped into it. So for the first one I had, it was very physical for me. It was a very physical release. So I vividly remember sitting around at my mat. They turned off the lights and then I was just waiting. I had taken the medicine and just, you know, laying there, you know, and I have a lot of anxiety as a person. So I was just like, okay, I'm ready for the healing, but you know, when is it going to hit me? I'm sitting in the dark, you know, and after about like 40 minutes, it still hadn't hit me. And I could start hearing of people around me experience the medicine. So, you know, that kind of just skyrocketed my anxiety. I was like, maybe like my friend that I met, you know, I'm not going to experience it. And maybe it just won't work on me. And the next thing I knew, I was in it. There was no gradual, like, oh, I kind of feel it coming on, you know, like I was just there. And it was relief, you know, because I was anxious about medicine not showing up for me. And even though I followed the diet, you know, and right when I was in it, it was relief. And it was like, I'm here, like I'm showing up for you. You know, it was like a very calming, nurturing energy, feminine energy as well, I would say. And yeah, I just remember I just got a huge smile on my face, huge, like I could not stop smiling. And I was just sitting with it. You know, I was just sitting and visuals were popping up for me. A lot of geographical shapes, you know, rainbow. And I saw like the pyramids for whatever reason. And it was kind of taking me through like this journey of like the beauty of ayahuasca and showing me the colors. And really on it, like the first part of the ceremony, I was just basking in that, and I was smiling and just sitting with it, you know, very humble. I was just, you know, very humble to this like being or whatever was coming to me, this experience. And eventually after an hour or two of that, I started to feel like I started to kind of stretch my body and kind of like move around like my hands, and I could feel the energy within my body. And I could feel kind of like the core of my energy and like where it was distributed throughout. And specifically in my shoulders, I felt this heaviness, and it was kind of bringing it to my attention. And it was like, why are you storing everything here? You know, your tension and your pain and all that like back stuff that no longer serves you, that you probably don't even think about, you know, consciously, like storing it physically here. And I started to just like, you know, stretch. I started to kind of do arm stretches. It started. And then I laid down on the mat and I felt very guided to do certain poses, like while I was sitting and laying down, to just like release. And I can't even recreate those poses. I've tried like in meditation because I really, again, I think possessed is such an ugly word, but I felt like an entity had entered me and was like showing me these moves. And really the message of that ceremony for me was, you know, you can heal your body through movement, and you can release tension and trauma, you know, in your body through dancing and laughing and yoga and stretching and just being a human being. And
physical
that
motion,
yes,
so helpful.
and I mean, I'd always done like a little bit of yoga here and there, but yeah, that was just like a huge wake up call for me. And yeah, I left that ceremony just sitting with that energy, so thankful, felt such a release from the first night. And I returned to my tambo and just sat with it. And I knew right away, you know, that was going to be a journey that helped me. I was like, this was the right thing for me to do, was to come here. And I wish all of my ceremonies had been that peaceful and lovely and you know, beautiful, but yeah, they all were in their own way. It was just some are much more challenging than others.
Yeah. Do you have an
Yeah,
example of one of those really challenging ones that you went through?
definitely.
Mm.
My second ceremony.
Yeah,
So
just the second one.
yes,
Immediately
yeah,
after this one.
of course, night and day. And although it was an amazing experience, I was very drained from it, obviously, right? Like letting go of this energy and this emotional process. So there was a day retreat. Like normally the ceremonies are all at night, like once a week, but they did one of the ceremonies in the morning. So I was like, you know what? Like, I'll just take it easy. It'll be day, beautiful jungle all around me. And that ended up being, like, you could say, darkest experience I had. Like I actually I went way deep into like shadow work. And I remember just having like a petrifying fear, like deer in the headlights hit me, like all of a sudden. It was very sudden and I couldn't escape it. I'm very good at like navigating and adapting, but it was just like, it was there at my core. It was who I was. It was like at that moment. And I just sat with it. And I was like, I can't keep running away from it, this fear. And I just sat with it. And of course, and then it showed me this vision of a bridge. And I was so scared to just walk. And it was telling me, like, it's okay to be afraid, but you just have to take a step. Like, you just have to keep walking. And I remember just like, I'm sure in person and also in my like subconscious, I was just shaking. And I was like trying to take these steps in this vision. And I finally made it all the way across. And they're like, courage is doing it even if you're afraid. And then it started to take me into a weird energy that I was not familiar with. And I started to feel like my energy was leaving my body. And I started to think about, death and the process of life. It was kind of showing me cycles of life and the brutality of it, like the rawness of it, the rawness of like, in the Sahara, like the animals, they hunt each other and it's like a cycle. And I think we're really numb to that in society. And yeah, it was making me sit with that. And I was kind of like, I felt like I was sinking into the energy, like sinking into the floor, and it was like covering me like vines.
Oh my gosh.
And I felt
terrifying.
It was terrifying. I mean, but again, it was bright out. It was like beautiful Amazon jungle all around. And then I'm like covered in these vines. And I felt like I was just getting sucked down. And I remember actively thinking like, this is how it is to die. Like this energy is coming to me. And this is like, when you're just, your body and your soul is too tired to keep fighting, you give in to the death, like you leave your body. And I was like, that's what it's showing me. And I remember, I don't know if it was a voice. I think it was, but something came to me and said, are you ready to go? Are you ready to cross like over? And I said, hell no. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm 19. Like my parents' worst nightmare.
Life has just begun.
Yeah. And I even thought at the time, like, I don't want to be a part of like criminalizing ayahuasca. Like, I don't want to be another face that's used of like, oh, this poor girl, went to heal and died. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, it was very real for me. And then it did start, like, I mean, it respected my decision, of course, right? And it started to calm down and I came out of it and I was just breathing with it. And now that I've done more research on ayahuasca, it's really interesting because a lot of people have similar experiences to that. A death experience or like a birth experience. I know one of my good friends at the retreat, like she would have visions of her giving birth, and which is, really intense. I never had that experience, but it does make me wonder if I had let that happen, if it would have been a rebirth for me. Maybe. And a lot of people say that they die on ayahuasca and then they come out a new person. I feel like I came out a new person, but I do think like, was that an invitation not to die, but for this version of me to die? And I think so. I think so, because there's nothing at that moment that would have put my life at risk. Logically, of course, now I know that.
Logically, but while you're in it,
when you're in it and every ounce of your being is telling you, that it's time. No.
Oh my
so I think it goes there, and it will bring things up in your subconscious that you don't even know is there.
Yeah.
You know, like fear of death and fear of like being. And yeah, I would say that was probably one of the most intense experiences I had. Overall, though, it was more healing. I mean, it was more like reflective, I'd say. It was more like, again, a view into my psyche for the most part than like traumatic experiences. And even that experience, I wouldn't say it was traumatic. I'd say, I mean, I took so much from it, right? So it was what I needed to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I had a meeting before this, and I was literally talking to someone else just about this experience. And it's so bizarre, because it's like, even though you know everything around you is okay, everyone is fine, you trust the people you're with, setting perfect, but as soon as ayahuasca's like, oh, you're gonna die tonight, you have no choice but to believe that. Even though you know it's not happening, you have no choice but to believe it. So earlier I was talking about my latest ayahuasca experience, where nothing was really wrong with me, nothing was ailing me, but ayahuasca was just like, you can't move right now, and you know why? It's because your heart's gonna fail and you're gonna die. And the entire time I'm just like, but I'm pretty healthy. So for ayahuasca to say that and to be like, well, you're gonna die in this mat tonight and there's nothing you can do about it.
You're like,
and
man.
not only that, but it was like, well, now, you know, shame on you for dying on these people's floor, and now they're gonna pick you up. And I'm just like, really? Like, that's messed up.
I know, but I mean, that's where it goes. Like, if you allow it, like, that is where it will go.
and that's what I think I realized about the moment, was not only was it showing me that I was going to die, because I, of course, everyone has a fear of the unknown, so that you know, equates to the fear of death for me, but also I was more upset that other people would have to clean up my body other than me dying. I was more so upset with that, and I'm just like, what does that say about me? So that kind of switched it around a bit. After the fact, obviously, at that moment I was still like, I don't want to die, but after the fact, you know, I had that thought process of like, how much do I kind of shove myself aside in order for the betterment of other people? Like, how often do I do that? Like, I do that so often, and throughout my entire life. So that's the lesson that I learned, I think, more so than, you know, the lesson of dying, but the lesson of making time and space for yourself, treating you as you would treat other people, giving yourself the time that you would give to other people. And that was as completely life-changing. But yeah, those moments can be so terrifying, but then I find that the most challenging experiences always come out as the best lessons that we've learned.
Yes, always. Definitely. And as you were telling that story too, like, that totally reminded me, a huge part of the dark moments I experienced was a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame, like, and I was sitting with that, and just the shame I felt, and like, just belief systems that I'd learned that did not serve me. And like, I remember one of the shamans told me as well, if you have guilt, you know, that's from an action you took. You know, you have guilt for what you did, but if you have shame, that's because you have like really shame for who you are. Like, there's a part of you that you're shameful about. And like, that's inner, you know, that's not just guilt where you feel guilty you did something. It's like, I'm shameful, like, for, you know, doing those things. So it's really about identity. And I was, you know, I think it really, the biggest thing is just sitting with a lot of this. A lot of this is repressed trauma that people have not dealt with. And I think ayahuasca gives you the perfect platform just to sit with it and experience it so you can release it. And that's what I've always heard is ayahuasca. It's 10 years of psychotherapy in one session.
Yeah, just about.
I mean, yeah, truly. Just the breakthroughs, you're forced to deal with things, and definitely a healing process. But absolutely. I'm trying to think as well as
I'm like reliving some experiences as we're
speaking. I know.
I'm just like,
I love speaking to other people who have experienced ayahuasca, because it kind of reinvigorates that energy of ayahuasca and the plant medicine and the lessons that we learned. And it's so easy to forget, to come back. You know, I remember when I left the retreat, I was like, you know, on a cloud, and I felt cleansed, and I was like, yes. And I came back home to my bedroom, and everything felt so foreign. Like even my music, I was like, it was almost like a third party. Like I was listening to someone else's music, and it was just so interesting. I had like a reflection of myself. Like I entered in my own energy in my environment, and I could kind of reflect on who I was before I left for the retreat. And just tons of synchronicities as well throughout the retreat, just showing me I was supposed to be there. I remember one of the times I was leaving my Maloka, and there's something called like a shamanic journey. A lot of times it's used to like find a spirit animal or like journey inward. So I did a solo shamanic journey with the shamans, and I got to join them, and they did like a reading on me, and they kind of got to like go into my psyche as well. And on my way over to that, I was just walking down the path in the Amazon, and this giant blue butterfly, like huge, like like both of my hands. I've never seen anything like it, like straight out of the movie Avatar or something. I was like, unreal. Flew down into the pathway and just sat there. And I remember just looking at it for a minute, like, this is crazy. Like, this is the most beautiful butterfly I've ever seen. And then it flew away, and it did its butterfly thing. And I went in, I went to the Maloka. And part of the reading was like, out of hundreds of cards, I had to choose one for my journey. And I chose the one. I turned it over. It was rebirth, and it was the blue butterfly.
Wow.
And I just sat with that, like, wow, like this is really like a journey for me. You know, this is really where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, this is what's supposed to happen. That's such a great thing, especially, you know, when you're someplace you've never been, having to be in this very vulnerable state, not sure who to trust, and you're getting like, you know, these signals from the universe or whoever that this is your perfect path that you're supposed to be on, and at this very moment. That's incredible.
Absolutely. I know. Yeah. And to this day now, I even still use that as a symbol for myself because of that encounter. If I see a blue butterfly, subconsciously, I'll just think to myself, you know, in my mind, like, maybe like, is this a message here for me? Like, is this a direction I'm supposed to go? Right. And I've had that happen where like I met a girl and we were talking about ayahuasca, and then I saw on her arm, she had a blue butterfly tattoo. And I was just like, what?
There.
Yeah. And I was like, what is happening? You know, like, but at one point, there's so many coincidences that they can't be coincidences. And it could be my mind looking for it, but I really don't, you know, like I just let it come to me. And yeah, that has also been a really rewarding thing I've taken from it as well.
That's amazing. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
But here's another question. So after, I don't know if this is the same, but after my first experience, like, you know, it was so much information, so much downloaded that I couldn't hold on to all of it. Really punch down, because I was like, I'm gonna forget this, I'm sure. But then so much that I forgot during session cropped up 3 months later. I was like, oh, that's the lesson I learned, and I totally had forgotten I'd learned that lesson. It was just in that moment of having that experience. But did you have any experiences like that where months later you're still finding lessons or having things come up and like, oh yeah, we did talk about this, you know?
Yes.
Ayahuasca?
Definitely. I definitely had things that would resonate with me as I like continued my journey, even after leaving the retreat. And even weirdly enough, and this isn't to make anyone worried, I was never worried about it, but I think it was like within the 3 months after leaving the retreat, I would sometimes, and not often, but I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would feel like I was on ayahuasca.
Oh.
And it was like, I don't know. I honestly have no idea if that's a common occurrence. Like, I don't think so. I've never even done research about it.
What's that feeling?
Just like fully feeling like I was in ayahuasca again. And never during the day, like when I'm driving or anything, but just in the middle, like if I ever woke up in the middle of the night, I think it maybe happened like 3 times in the 3 months. I just woke up at like 3 a.m. by myself, and I was like, I feel like I'm on ayahuasca. Like, I don't know if that was like and feeling like the energy of it. And I don't know what could have caused that, but maybe the dream state like activated that within myself again, who knows. But definitely realizations that I like had. I remember one thing that I'd completely forgotten from the ceremony was part of the ceremony, it showed me past lives that I had experienced. And these past lives, I've sat with them a lot. I don't know if they really are my past lives. It's possible that they're scenarios or characters that my subconscious came up with to express something to me, you know, to like communicate something with me. But one of the past lives I'd completely forgotten about, and it was about like the jail system. and I was sitting in jail. And I have no idea what I did, like supposedly in this vision, but I remember just sitting in solitary confinement and just sitting with whatever I had done. Again, like that shameful feeling, right? That shame, and sitting with that. And I just saw the jail system and the incarceration system and how corrupted it was. And that was something I knew logically already, but I was like empathetically feeling it. You know, a lot of these people in jail or prisoners, they're put in there and then they're given no coping mechanisms, like no tools to grow. And then after they've served their time, they're thrown back into society
and
with no
expected to pick up where they left off. Apparently.
And then they have a record that will like stop them from ever succeeding.
You
know, so it's like a system of sabotage. And I was just sitting with that. And just feeling the emotions of what an inmate, I suppose, like I can't even imagine, but that's what I was experiencing if that was the experience. And just pretty much how backwards it was. And we need to move more toward, like, the future it was showing me is like a place of healing. And obviously, like, you can draw lines of who should actually receive that, you know, because some crimes you could say are unforgivable. But especially people that will be released back into society, it's like these are human beings, and we need to, you know, contribute in the healing in their process so that they can come out and be functional people and don't repeat the trauma that caused them to do that.
And I mean, jail is supposed to be a system of rehabilitation, but at some point, I don't know. I don't know what happened. Like, they just started throwing people in and just locking them up and throwing away the key. You know what I mean?
100%, just profiting. And so I think it was a lot of the downloads were more logical, like just about how our world will change that I just couldn't absorb at the time. And there's like numerous ones I could go into, but that was one that definitely stuck out to me. I would say, like, honestly, just messages for someone who is called to do ayahuasca is just do your research, you know. And I'd say if you're called to do it, like if you're watching this podcast to learn more about ayahuasca, there's a reason for that. And I'd look for the synchronicities in your life that are calling you to grow. And when you're ready, take that step. And there are affordable ways to do it. You know, you don't have to. I did this like my first time because I wanted to be safe, you know, and I paid extra for like a retreat, you know, and a whole package. But there are also like workaway experiences that you can do, and you can still do the ayahuasca as a facilitator, and it's doable. So financially, like, there are ways around it if you feel called to do the experience. That is the last experience that I'll share. Is there was one point in the retreat where I felt ready, and I had let go after like 2 or 3 weeks towards the end. And I wanted to go further, and I wanted to try to project myself, you know, out of my body, or like maybe potentially explore dimensions or anything. I heard all these crazy stories about. I wanted to experience it. So I was meditating, the ayahuasca had hit me, and I tried to project myself, and it was like a wall. It wouldn't let me go there. And I kept asking, you know, why not? And they just said, like, you're not ready. Like, you're not ready yet. And I mean, I was 19, right? So who knows if that had something to do with it. But I think doing as much work as possible before the retreat, you'll get a lot more out of it. And
and that's something I really respect about the medicine is it will not lead you astray. Like, when you need specific information, it will well, it may go a roundabout way to get it to you, but all those places are very important to that spot that you need to get to. And if you're not ready, it won't just throw you out there. It'll be just like, all right, you'll get there. Just calm down. Just relax. And you'll get there.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
But thank you so much, Taylor. I definitely want to have you back on to talk about more experiences.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
I was going to say, I'm hoping if everything works out, and we have to see with COVID, I have the antibodies, and I'm planning to get the vaccine. So if all works out in like probably around fall, I'm hoping to become a facilitator at an ayahuasca retreat.
Amazing.
So of course,
will you start here? Will you go?
I would go to Ecuador. I believe that's the retreat that I'm looking at now. Okay. But we'll see where we're at in the world. Like, there are no solid plans these times, you know. So I'm very flexible, but I'm hoping to do that. So hopefully maybe I'll come back, share my journey as I continue to grow with the plant medicine.
That would be amazing. I would love that. Oh my gosh. Well, I hope that works out for you. Oh my God.
Thank you, Pammy. Yes.
Great experience to have. So Taylor, you are at taylorzipp.com. Is there any other places you want people to find you?
Yeah, just, I mean, it's pretty all straightforward, Taylor Zipp, and my Instagram handle, everything, TikTok. And from there, it links to my digital marketing agency as well that I have founded. So you can always learn more about that just on my website.
Perfect. I have to visit. I haven't seen your work yet.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure.